Grace and peace. Rev C here. Popping on a little later than usual, but never too late to talk about our God, our great God. So again, I'm going to start a new series, new teachings on the attributes of God or studying God. We're going to be looking at God. Theology Proper is what it's called in theological circles. So grace and peace, giving people a chance to come on in. Come on in. So as we begin this study, we're looking at knowing God, the knowing God, and knowledge of God in our hearts is what transforms us. Knowing God, truly knowing Him, is what transforms us. So we're going to be looking at God and the power of knowing God. So the foundation of religion is the character of God. The foundation of religion is the character of God. So when we talk about theology, theology proper, studying God, it comes from a Greek word that literally means speech or words, logoi, about God, theos. So the one true God is distinguished from all others by his glorious nature and his Trinitarian personality that we see revealed as the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. What is the purpose for studying God? The purpose for studying God is to live unto Him through Christ. We want to live for Him. Now, we give a word of warning. We must never study God as we do other subjects that we seek to master. You know, some people will study math to be a master of math, or theology. You should never master theology. Theology should always master you. Theology should master you. Type of one, if that makes sense, that we should never seek to master theology or master knowing God. We should seek to let theology master us. Now, the posture that we should take when we begin this study, this is an awesome study. When we begin this study, we should have a posture of humility. A posture of humility, a posture of worship, because your theology should be the fuel for your doxology. So our posture must be worship, and our theology should be the fuel of doxology. Now, we we should also know that it is only because of God's stuff revelation that we are able to know him. It's only through his revelation, which is an act of grace, that we are allowed to know him. He reveals himself to us. So when we talk about God's attributes, you will hear them called many things in different books. So we're talking about his supreme greatness. When we talk about God's supreme greatness, we're talking about his summum magnum. That's Latin for you. Summum magnum. His supreme greatness. We're talking about his power, his uniqueness. We talk about the highest, Augustine called it the highest excellencies of God. The Fourth Lateran Council in 1215 says that we firmly believe and simply confess that there is one only true God who is eternal and immeasurable, almighty and unchangeable, incomprehensible and ineffable, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, three persons, but one absolutely simple essence or substance or nature. So we're talking that God is eternal. He is indivisible. This is the God that we are beginning this study on. So we're looking at, and this is just part one. So you'll hear words like attributes, perfections, virtues, properties, excellencies. All of these are words to describe the attributes of God. Now, what are attributes? What are attributes? Attributes are qualities or characteristics that are closely and permanently associated with someone. So much so that it can be used to identify that person. So God, philosophers, they've called, they've spoken of essential attributes, or no, essential attributes versus accidental qualities. God does not have accidental qualities. God has essential attributes, which simply means he cannot cease to possess any of his attributes without him ceasing to be God. So he has essential attributes, meaning he cannot cease to possess any attribute without him being ceasing to be God. Now, God's attributes do not merely refer to what we ascribe to God, but to who and what he is as he reveals himself to us. Who and what he is as he reveals himself to us. So when you see passages like Psalm 29, when it talks about ascribe unto God, ascribe unto to God. It means to give, to ascribe. We're simply acknowledging and expressing the glory that is due to his name. The glory that is due to his name. Now, the Old Testament testifies, it bears witness to God's absolute reality. When we look at Exodus 3:14, we know God says to Moses, I am that I am. He is the God who is. Isaiah 48:12 says, I am he, I am the first, I am also the last. The name of God, the Shem of God, is his glory. God's name is the object of worship and prayer. His name encapsulates what we as his people learn about him from his gracious works. So when Hagar called the name of the Lord that spake to her, thou art the God who sees me. El Roi, the God who sees me. Abraham called on the name of the Lord as the everlasting God, El alone. God's name is his very nature. It's what he reveals himself to be. God's name has divine attributes and performs divine acts. Psalm 20, verse 1, the name of the Lord defends his people, it saves them. His name is holy, his name is reverence. And so then when you get to the Greek, to the New Testament, God is, we have words like phusis, his nature, his theosis, he's divine, theotes, his Godhead, divine nature. So God's nature is what elevates him above all creation. And so when you see that Greek word phusis, or his nature, that signifies the essential character of a thing, its disposition of a thing. So Paul says, in Galatians 4:8, he implies that God has a definite nature. God's nature is divine. God's nature is divine. Theosis. It's the Godhead. It's the divine being. It what makes God God. It what makes God God. Type of 1 if that's making sense. And hit the like button, share and subscribe. Let people know we're on. Type of 1 if that makes sense, or type in the chat. What's your favorite attribute of God? So when we'll look at some important scriptures on God's attributes as an overview. We'll go deeper into his attributes separately on different videos and stuff like that. Let's look at Exodus 34. Exodus 34, verse 6. Give me a second. See if I can get this pulled up. Exodus 34. All right, let's pull up. So Exodus 34 is one of the most significant divine self-revelations in the Bible. It is one of the more significant divine revelations, self-revelation in the Bible. So if you look at Exodus 34, verse 6 and 7, Moses is praying, let me see your glory. Show me your glory. It says, then Yahweh passed in front of him and called out, Yahweh, Yahweh God, compassionate. Compassionate. All right, here we go. Here we go. Hello, grace and peace. Grace and peace. All right, so it says, there we go, 34 verse 6. So yes, God places Moses in the cleft of the rock, and he passes by in front of him. and he called out. God calls out his own name. Notice that. Then Yahweh passed in front of him and called out, Yahweh, Yahweh. So God, as he is passing by Moses, in front of Moses, as he is passing in front of Moses, he's giving Moses his attributes. He says, Yahweh, Yahweh God, compassionate, gracious, slow to anger, abounding in loving kindness and truth. He keeps loving kindness for thousands, who forgives iniquity, transgressions, and sin. Yet he will by no means leave the guilty unpunished, visiting the iniquities of the father on the children and on the grandchildren to the third and fourth generation. So here God lays out his own nature. He's sovereign. He says, I am the Lord. We see his goodness, his mercy, his grace, his long suffering. Then you go to another great passage, Psalm 145. Is another great revelation of God's attributes. This is an acrostic. This is a Hebrew acrostic, which means that each letter, the first word of each verse begins with the Hebrew alphabet. So if you look over but we'll see that his attributes I will exalt you. So you see it begins with an aleph, which is the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet. But he goes on to talk about himself. Great is Yahweh. Great is Yahweh and greatly to be praised. Then verse 8. Yahweh is gracious and compassionate, slow to anger, great in loving kindness. He's good to all. His compassions are all over his works. And he goes on and on. And he talks about his various attributes. Now, it's interesting that David gives God's attributes in order that we should praise and worship him. David gives the attributes of God so that we will praise and worship him. We do not worship a nebulous mystery. We worship a God who is known in his attributes. This is what I like to call reasonable praise. It's not emotionalism. It's not being a fanatic. Your praise has a reason, and it's because of God's attributes. We see his goodness, his might, his majesty, his righteousness, his compassion, all of these attributes. And so all of those attributes can be summed up in the two dimensions of who and what God is. And that is his greatness and his goodness. His greatness and his goodness. So that is just beginning to look at God's attributes and some of the key texts of there. His goodness and his greatness. Now, as we get ready to end, I want us to realize that God's attributes are co-equally shared with the other members of the Trinity. So the attributes of God are revealed concerning the one divine nature. His one divine nature. That is powerful when you think about that. So, in preparation for the next lesson, the next video we're going to look at, delve into Psalm 145. Just read it, worship the attributes of God, worship God there for him revealing his attributes to us. We're going to get deep. We're going to get heavy into these attributes. We are going to learn more and more about our God. This is Rev C saying, God bless you, God keep you. I'll see you in the next video. And always, if you wish to support, if this has been a blessing to you and you just want to donate $1 or $2 to the ministry, the Cash App is there, $Rev Cockrell. If you feel led, if this has been a blessing to you. Yes, God is infinite. We will never fully understand him. That is going to be one of the great joys of heaven and eternity. It's just learning new things about God. God bless you. God keep you guys.